Today we are talking about Jesus, a friend to failures, which for me is really good news because I fail. Surprise. In case you didn't know that, I make mistakes. I mess up. And my guess is, my sneaking suspicion is, you do too. You just got that look on your face. Like sometimes you've messed up too, that there's things in your life that you're, I've failed, I've messed up. But here's the message. Here's the good news. Jesus Christ is a friend to failures. Isn't that good news? We're going to be in Matthew chapter 26, and I'm going to begin by reading verse 36. Chapter 26, verse 36. Then Jesus went with them, that's his disciples, to a place called Gethsemane. And he said to his disciples, sit here while I go over there and pray. Now, there's a lot going on in just this verse, and I want to unload it a little bit before we move forward so that we're able to get a little bit of the feel of what exactly Jesus is going through. First of all, what's in a name? Gethsemane. Funny name, because it's not English. But in the language that Jesus was familiar with, Gethsemane simply meant olive press, the place where olives are squeezed. Olive oil isn't hard to get. I mean, you got to really squeeze an olive to get it to cry and to get some of that juice to come out, the flow to make olive oil. So this place is called Gethsemane, the place where olives are squeezed. And Jesus, he is about to face the greatest pressure and squeezing of his life. And so he enters into a place called Olive Press as sort of a picture for us about this is the circumstances that Jesus is about to face. He will be squeezed and pushed on, and he will receive pressure from every direction, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. Have you ever been there? Have you ever just felt it squeezing in from every direction where it feels like life itself maybe is going to just ooze out because of the pressure around you from every angle? I had a week like that this week. I'm not going to give you the long, detailed version. It's a different time, different place, but I want to give you the rundown. This week, beginning on Monday, Ruth, our youngest daughter, we were told that she had some swelling on her optical nerve, and that scared us because that could be several things, but most of them weren't good. Pressure being put on the brain from maybe something growing there or an abnormality from birth. It was terrifying. And we went from doctor to another doctor and got some more news that was even more scary. We went from potentially bad news to likely bad news to the last visit we had was on a Thursday with a specialist to getting us, we were freaked out for almost certainly really bad news. Something bad was going on, and we were rushing to try to get some imaging done for Ruth to find out what was going on with her brain. Some of y'all know because I had no rhyme or reason. I just started taking, it's like pray, 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 pray. Some of y'all have heard about this because you got asked to pray. But we went on Friday morning to Baptist expecting for Ruth to have to go through an MRI, a CT scan. We got there, though. I remember that morning waking up and just feeling like the life was being squeezed out of me. And I said, oh God, if there's any way that this can go away, please, God, make it happen. That's where I was at. But when we get there, they start a different regimen of tests. And long story short, from the imaging they had and the procedures they were able to do, she's fine. She's okay. Praise God's right. Friday night felt so much better than Friday morning. But in the moment, that squeezing, I felt like I was sick. Thank you all for your prayers, because prayer works, prayer matters. Amen. But here's the thing, not every story ends that same way, does it? Sometimes the squeezing keeps on and it literally squeezes the life out of us. That's what Jesus was going through. He knew how it was going to end. He knew he was feeling that burden, that pressure. What I felt Monday through Friday morning, he felt in that moment in Gethsemane. The Bible tells us in Isaiah chapter 53 that he carried our burdens. that He bore our sorrows. The hurt, the brokenheartedness, the pressure we feel was heaped on the shoulders of Jesus, and He bore the pressure of all of us. Did you know that? And He knows that that is coming. He sees down the road and He knows it's going to be laid upon Him, that pressure, that squeezing on His life. Oh man. There's another thing in this verse that's of interest. A lot of Bible teachers, in fact most scholars and a lot of preachers, I throw myself in this group because I think it's correct, see an allusion to another story from the Bible, going back to the Hebrew Bible, what we call the Old Testament. There's another time where a man was about to face an intense test of his faith. And he says to those with him, "You wait here while I go over here." And that man was Abraham. Abraham had a son named Isaac, and he was told, through your son Isaac will come the blessing. You will receive blessing. Your family will be a blessing to all the world. Then God asks him, doesn't ask him, tells him to do the unthinkable. Take your son to Mount Moriah and offer him as a sacrifice. And Abraham's like, are you kidding me? Can you imagine the intensity of pressure laid on Abraham? But this isn't a sermon on Genesis chapter 22. You can read about it there. We can unpack it more at another time. But here's the gist of it. He goes up to the mountain with his son, and he says to those with him, "You wait here while we go over there." He gets on top of the mountain, and as he lays his son down, I'd imagine hands trembling with the knife raised, God says, "Stop! Don't harm the boy." And God provided a ram, to stand in place of the boy so that he would not have to die. And there's a lot of elements, a lot of moving parts in that story. But the big thing is that when we are faithful to God with the things that are the most important to us, God makes a way. God makes a way. He gives a replacement to pay the price that we could never pay. God gave His Son for that to happen. And here's the thing. As God's teaching Abraham the story of faith, and through him teaching us, God gives the substitute. God pays the price. God takes care of it. The ram is provided. That happened on Mount Moriah, on Gethsemane, where Jesus was on the Mount of Olives. He could look over and see Mount Moriah. Mount Moriah is where the temple was built. And as Jesus is sitting there knowing what He's about to face, He certainly sees Mount Moriah because He's Jesus, Son of God. He was there with Abraham. But He knows something. There's not a lamb that's going to step in for Him because He is the Lamb. He is the one that made Abraham's story end well. And so Jesus has all these things rolling around in His mind, and He knows where things are going. And with that background about Jesus' experience and what He knows is coming down the road, we get into verse 37. And taking with Him Peter and the two sons of Zebedee, He began to be sorrowful and troubled. Then He said to them, "My soul is very sorrowful, even to death. Remain here and watch with me." And going a little farther, He fell on His face and prayed, saying, "My Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as You will." Jesus is wrestling with the Father's will. He knows that the sins and the brokenness of humanity need to be removed. And He prays to His Father, "God, if there's any other way, can't there be a ram for me? If there is, please let that happen. But God, not what I will, but what You will, let that be done." Now, I don't want to go too deep into this because we're going to touch more on it next week, but I do want to whet your appetite, give a bit of a spoiler to lead into it. Jesus is in a garden wrestling with the Father's will. There's a tree placed before Him. That is the cross. What will He do? This is reminiscent of another man way before Jesus, our ancestor, Adam. who also was in a garden, also facing a test at a tree. And Adam's answer at that test was to God, not what you want, but what I want. And he sinned and he ate of the tree. And all of us, ancestors of Adam, have followed in that same course of footsteps. We have said to God, not what you will, but what I will. That is sin. That's what made what Jesus did necessary. The relationship had to be repaired because we were not designed to do what I will, not what God will, because He is the author and the giver of life. And Jesus then comes to a garden facing the tree, and Jesus does what Adam should have done and what we should have done but didn't. He says to the Father, not what I will, but what you will. And Jesus lays it down there, and in this moment of self-sacrifice and utter and complete faithfulness and dependence upon His Father, He is afraid in His human flesh. He is terrified. He is wrestling with this, and that's Jesus' hurt. It says He's sorrowful to the point of death. He feels like He could have just fell over dead right there in the garden, but He knew it wasn't going to be that easy. There would be more rejection, more abuse heaped upon Him. He knew what was necessary. And even so, He says, Father, not what I will, but what you will. He takes with Him 3 of His closest friends deeper into the garden. We pick that up in verse 40. And He came to the disciples and He found them sleeping. Why is it that Jesus took them into the garden? There's at least 2 reasons, probably more, but I just want to share 2. 1, to teach them how to faithfully respond to God even when things are hard. Jesus never stops being the example, never stops being the teacher, and He draws them in and says, you want to see what it is when everything's against you, when everything is crushing down on you, how ought you to respond? You pray, you pray, you pray. And you lay it all before God and you trust His will. So teaching them is part 1. Part 2 is He didn't want to be alone. He didn't want to be alone. When things are hard, we crave human companionship, just to be there with us. Remember, one of the things God said was not good way back in Genesis and Eden was it's not good for man to be alone. We were not created to just be in isolation. And when Jesus is going through this intense period of difficulty, He craves companionship of His closest friends. Yes, He's giving them an example, He's teaching them, but He also wants them there. And in verse 40, all they have to do is stay awake and watch, and they are sleeping. He said, so you could not watch with me, He says to Peter. You could not watch with me 1 hour. Watch and pray that you may not enter into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. Again, for the second time, He went away and He prayed, my Father, if this cannot pass unless I drink it, your will be done. And again, He came and He found them sleeping, for their eyes were heavy. So leaving them again, He went away and prayed for the 3rd time, saying the same words again. Then He came to the disciples and He said to them, sleep and take your rest later on. See, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. He asked them to stay awake and to be watchful and to pray, and 3 times they fell asleep. These are the same ones. Go back to verse, if you will, 35, that set up our passage for this morning. In verse 35, they're coming off Jesus announcing to them, look, Peter, you're going to betray me 3 times. You're going to deny that you know me. And Peter's like, no way. And in verse 35, he says, Lord, I'm willing to die with you. And it says all the disciples said the same. And then they actually get into the garden, and the one thing they're called on to do in this moment isn't die, it's to stay awake. And they can't even do it. They fail their friend in his greatest time of need. They leave Him hanging. But how does Jesus respond to their failure? You see, this whole narrative, this event in the life of Jesus isn't so much meant to highlight their failure. We can plug ourselves into that, which we're going to be invited to do in a moment. we can plug ourselves into that failure and see. There's been times we've made bold declarations of loyalty to Jesus. Jesus, I'll stick with you no matter what, only to find a short time later we're asleep on the job. But it's not about us. It's about Jesus, thank God. Because Jesus, even when his friends failed, is a friend to those that fail. Go back to verse 41, if you will. You see in verse 41, Jesus tells them, after finding them asleep, watch and pray that you may not enter into temptation. The spirit is indeed willing, but the flesh is weak. Who's Jesus concerned about? When he goes back and he finds them sleeping, he doesn't say, how dare you, you bunch of jerks, leaving me hanging? What's your problem? You had one job, and you failed at it. What's your problem? Is that how Jesus responds? His concern is for his friends. And he says, look, get up. You need to pray. You need to be vigilant. Why? Because the spirit's willing, but the flesh is weak. Jesus isn't giving them an excuse. He's giving them a warning, a gentle warning, saying, listen, you got to always be prayerful and always be on your guard, because despite your best efforts, despite all of your desire, you will have this weakly, fleshly body always failing you in some way. It's up against you. It'll make you sleepy. You'll have appetites you got to combat and curb. Be prayerful, be watchful so you don't fall into temptation. He gives them this gentle warning because he's concerned over their well-being. Do they take his advice? No. They fail again, fall asleep. We find the depth of their failure after this event. Even worse than falling asleep, Peter really does deny him 3 times. He's asked and told, you've been with Jesus, right? Nope, don't know him. Verse 46, rise, let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand. Those that arrest Jesus are guards from the temple coming with torches. You remember what Jesus can see from the Mount of Olives? He looks out from Gethsemane, looks over to the Temple Mount, and he sees the torches filing out of the temple coming up to get him. He sees it coming. He knows what's happening. Jesus is in complete control of the situation. We got to understand that. He's not some passive victim that gets trapped. Jesus lays his life down intentionally. He's in control. He has orchestrated and set up this event so that he can die for me and for you. It was intentional because he loves us that much. He died for his friends who failed him. You catch that? As they are approaching to arrest him, he says to them, come on guys, get up. They're coming to get me. And Jesus proceeds from there to go to die for those very ones that were in the process of failing him. He died for Peter, for James, for John, for all the guys that failed him. He died for me, Kyle Thompson, who has failed him and failed him often. And all of you who have failed, and I assume, being human, you failed often too. Not judging you, that's just the human condition. We fail. But while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. I want to invite you to plug your story into Peter's life. One who steps out faithfully, says, Jesus, I'm going to stick with you even if it costs me my life. I'm all in. No matter what it costs, I'm in. Only to find yourself at some point later failing him, dropping the ball, asleep on the job, or just outright not living for Jesus. I'd like you to watch this video and experience Peter's experience alongside him.
I have this thing, I give everything nicknames. Ever since Jesus gave me the nickname Peter, I love nicknames. It's my thing, right? And so this whole week, I've been giving things nicknames all the days of the week. Like this past Sunday, that was Super Palm Branch Sunday. I've got to shorten that, but I got Miraculous Monday, Terrific Tuesday, Wild Wednesday, Thunderous Thursday. And because this week has been so amazing, I went ahead earlier on this week and I named Friday. I'm calling it Good Friday because it has to be good, am I right? I'm telling you, it's been so amazing. So back to Thunderous Thursday, we have the Passover meal. So many things happened that night. Then after the meal, Jesus calls us out of the garden, right? And he wants us all to pray. He asked me, James, and John to come a little bit further. We carb loaded. We kept falling asleep. But one time I woke up, right? And I'm looking yonder and I'm watching Jesus pray, and he is saying something like, what is it? If you can, take this cup from me, but not my will, but yours. And then, I mean, it went fast and furious, right? Like all chaos breaks loose. Judas kisses Jesus on the cheek. All these guards come around to arrest Jesus. And I'm thinking to myself, someone has to do something, right? I volunteer as tribute. This will be my Sparta moment, right? I grab my sword. I'm going to be known as the guy that starts the revolution right here in the garden, except I'm known for the guy that just swipe right, and I cut off this guy's ear. I, Vincent Van Gogh. I'm a fisherman, not a swordsman. But I'm telling you this right now, right in the middle of all of it, Jesus picks up the ear and puts it right back on the guy. I'm like, that is so cool. Do that again. He's like, now's not the time, Peter. And I'm like, cool, right? And then before you know it, they take Jesus to the high priest's house. And we all just kind of scattered. I think we didn't want to be recognized, Didn't want to be seen with them. So I find myself at this campfire, right? It's kind of late at night, and I'm just minding my own P's and Q's, right? And all of a sudden, this girl comes walking around the campfire, and she's looking at me, and she's like, you're with them. You're one of the disciples. You're one of the followers. And I'm telling you, every eye is on me. It is like Survivor Island, and I'm about to get voted out, right? And so I'm like, just quietly, just get up and go, I don't know what you're talking about, all right? I just don't know what you're talking about. It's not me, okay? And then here's what I decided to do, right? I'm going to go up to the gates. I just want to see if I can see Jesus, but I don't want to be seen with Jesus. Does that make any sense? So I'm trying to go up to the gate, and sure enough, another girl recognizes me, and she's like, you're with them. You're with the man that claims to be the Son of God, aren't you? And why wouldn't she recognize me? So many people saw us this week. I'm just like, I don't know what you're talking about, all right? It wasn't me, all right? I think throughout the night, I just didn't want to be recognized. I was trying so hard, maybe just to be invisible, just to slink in the shadows, Just get through the night. Sure as the sun rises, someone recognizes me, ear incident, and that's even more bold than before. And they're like, You're with them, right? You're with them. You're one of the disciples. You're with the man that claims to be the Son of God. And I'm just so tired, right? I just had the longest night. I just go, no, I'm not. I don't know what you're talking about. Just leave me alone. Just leave me alone. And two things happen at that very moment. The first is I hear the most blood-curdling sound I ever did hear in my whole life, and it was that rooster. And the second is I'm looking right in the eyes of Jesus, because he has those eyes, and he was not looking at me with judgment or shame. He was just looking at me with a whole lot of love. And Jesus, that night, they beat him, tore his flesh, they mutilated him, they punched him, they kicked him, they mocked him, they just kept saying, hey, where's your heavenly Father now, huh? Who's gonna get you out of this one? And everything in me just wanted to stand up and just say, stop it! You don't know what you're doing, all right? Leave him alone! That's my Lord! That's my King! That's my friend! Just leave him alone. I caught a glimpse of him. I mean, he was hardly even recognizable. That, early this morning, they took Jesus to Pontius Pilate, and from every side, I just keep, it's like this swirling wind. I just keep hearing these murmurs, these whispers, and it's like, crucify him, like the whole town, just crucify him. And I just want to cover my ears, but it just keeps getting louder and louder. Crucify him, crucify him. This would have been the moment, right, that the 12 of us banded together, 30 dozen, stand up for him. We didn't. We all, I ran. I ran again. I nicknamed it Good Friday. This was supposed to be just a really good day. There's nothing good about it.
All of us can see Peter in ourselves, places where we failed Jesus. The God that loved us, the God that made us, we didn't step up and acknowledge him. If it were up to us and what we're capable of, Good Friday, there's nothing good about it. But it's not up to us, is it? It's up to Jesus Christ, the Son of God, who came into the world to rescue sinners, of whom I am the worst. That's what it's about. If you track Peter's story, you learn he failed. He wasn't there when Jesus was dying. He wasn't there when Jesus was buried. He was skeptical when it was told him that Jesus had raised from the dead. But Jesus, the resurrected Jesus, meets Jesus later. And if you read the end of John's gospel, you learn Jesus invites him right back. Jesus says, look, Peter, I want to be reconciled to you. I want you to be with me. What I did brings you back despite your failure. We're about to sing a song, worshiping together, and this time of worship is meant to be a time of invitation also, just to wrestle with this question. What step do I need to make to honor the Lord? Maybe you're already a follower of Jesus Christ. You've already committed to follow him, but when you look at your life, you're like, I'm being a lot like Peter right now. Rooster crows and I've denied him 1, 2, 3. I'm asleep on the job. I'm not where I need to be. Maybe what you need to do is come forward and recommit and say, listen, that dedication I made to Jesus, I want it to be known that that is my commitment. And I want to publicly acknowledge I am a devoted follower of Jesus. It could be you've never made that decision before. And as we worship, we sing this song, you're invited to come forward and we'll talk about what it means to lay your life to Jesus, to allow his sacrifice to benefit you for your salvation. The invitation, just going to quote from 2 Corinthians 5:20. We are therefore Christ's ambassadors, as though God were making his appeal through us. We implore you, we beg you, on Christ's behalf, be reconciled to God. If you need that reconciliation, you're invited to come forward. Let's talk.